The WhistlinDiesel situation continues to get more and more bizarre following his recent shocking arrest for tax evasion, not from the IRS or the federal government, but from the Tennessee state government. Apparently, this has to do with registering a vehicle out of state. He says he wasn't even given a warning. They never contacted him. He has no criminal record, has never been in trouble with law enforcement, and then out of nowhere, instead of sending him a bill, they accuse him of intentionally trying to violate their tax law. Now, he's been speaking about this on his popular YouTube channel, really just going over the situation in a matter of fact. And now in a shocking new development, he says the government there is trying to prevent him from exercising his First Amendment rights. Here's what we know. WhistlinDiesel says Tennessee is trying to shut him up, and the way they're doing it shows just how concerned they are of him telling the public what's going on. The question now isn't just, did he owe tax on a Ferrari that no longer exists and rarely, if ever, was in Tennessee? It's, how far can the state of Tennessee go to control what a defendant with millions of followers is allowed to say about his own case? Now, back in November, 5 officers showed up at Cody's front door in Tennessee and arrested him on felony tax evasion charges and hauled him off to jail over sales tax on a Ferrari F8 that was registered in Montana and later burned up in one of his most popular videos.
I was arrested by 5 police officers at my front door and jailed several days ago.
And we're talking here about roughly 30 grand in alleged unpaid sales tax, a bill he could easily pay, but a case that now carries a potential 1 to 6 year prison sentence under Tennessee state law if the state wins.
This was never about the money. This was not about $27,000. This was about sending a message. So I don't know if they targeted this and chose me on purpose because they thought it would get the word out that, oh, they're collecting tax, you better move your registrations to Tennessee. I think they picked the wrong guy for that because even though it was public when it happened, it's going to be a lot more public now.
Up to that point, Cody says he's never been arrested, had a clean record, and had never been told he owed anything. No bill, no warning, no audit, no, hey man, here's what you owe, here's the deadline. Just a straight up indictment out of nowhere and 5 police officers showing up at his door. Now, after he bonded out, he did what he always does. He went online. He then posted his mugshot. He posted the indictment. He made videos just matter-of-factly explaining what happened. And he even dropped merch with the public indictment printed on it. Now, as you can imagine, this case has gone viral. The posts have exploded, pulling millions of views and dragging the Tennessee Department of Revenue and the local DA's office straight into the spotlight. Now, Cody has said that he feared that they were trying to make an example out of him. And of course, if they were doing that, they've really brought a lot of scrutiny onto themselves. And that's where this fight is really starting here, as they seem to want to stop him from just matter-of-factly speaking about his own situation. And that's where this new fight starts, the gag order.
I got not only this investigative report related to the tax evasion, the alleged tax evasion, but also a gag order to stop talking about it, which you would think would violate my First Amendment right. I had no clue that existed. I didn't know what a gag order was, so I did some research. Basically, it would say that if this goes through, which I have court for on Monday, not even the tax evasion thing, the gag order, if this were to go through on Monday, I would not be able to say anything at all about this case.
According to the motion Cody showed on camera, the state basically told the judge, make him stop talking. The language they use is pretty aggressive. They cite his influence, around 20 million combined followers, and they asked the court to prohibit him from making any pretrial extrajudicial statements on any social platform.
So the fact that my First Amendment right is being tampered with is insane. That's actually insane. I did not know that a gag order was possible. And so I have court for that on Monday, before this whole thing. That just shows how much this whole thing is going to blow up. And I very much so value my First Amendment right.
So in plain English, no videos, no posts, no commentary about the case at all, while this is pending. But they didn't stop there. The motion also goes after his wallet. Prosecutors asked the judge to ban him from monetizing his prosecution in any form. They pointed directly at that merch with the indictment on it, plus his highly viewed videos about his arrest as examples of him turning their case into content. This really is not a good look. He has every right to talk about his situation. Now, on top of that, the state claims his posts are dangerous to a fair trial. In filings and in court, they argue he has been pontificating on the merits of the case, calling out investigators by name, which is public record, pushing what they describe as conspiracy theories about the government's motives, and tossing in a bunch of wild lines that, in their view, only exist to fire up his audience. They told the judge that this could potentially taint a jury pool and even put people involved in the case at risk. Again, if you've seen these videos, he's like just matter-of-factly breaking down what happened. Now, one example that came up in court, an assistant DA's wife, who isn't involved in the case, reportedly got a random text with a screenshot of Cody's indictment and a message basically saying, "What is this petty BS about?" Prosecutors admitted there's no proof Cody directed that, of course, but they still used it as evidence that his content is bringing heat down on their families, and it's a high-profile case. So Cody apologized for that in court, but he's been very clear on camera. Don't threaten anyone, be respectful, and of course, don't harass state employees. Now, the other big piece here Cody dropped in his video is the investigative report. He says he didn't even get his multi-page report until a week and a half or 2 weeks after his arrest. And in that report, according to Cody, you see exactly how far the state went before they ever knocked on his door. He claims they contacted more than a dozen people and businesses tied to that Ferrari F8, dealers, transporters, insurance, his own accountant, and built their case quietly in the background. The part that really set him off is a note he says came from a state agent documenting a conversation with his accountant. According to Cody, the agent wrote that they advised the accountant not to tell Cody about the conversation and to leave assets as they were while the investigation continued. So in Cody's view, that's proof positive that this wasn't about getting the tax bill paid. It's about setting up a high-profile arrest to potentially send a message about people registering cars in places like Montana. And this is apparently some sort of a loophole issue they're trying to contend with, and Cody feels like they're trying to make an example out of him, someone who's never been in legal trouble before and could easily have paid that bill. Combine that with the gag order request, and you really see the picture he's painting here. First, they allegedly kept him in the dark instead of just saying, "Hey, you owe X, here's your deadline." Then they arrest him with cameras rolling, and now they're asking a judge to cut off his ability to speak and his income anytime he talks about the case they're bringing against him. From the state side, the story is very different. They say this is a straightforward felony tax evasion case over a Ferrari that spent some time in Tennessee while being registered in a tax-friendly state elsewhere. And their argument is once Cody turned his criminal case into content, complete with merch and viral titles, it crossed a line in their view from talking about your case into actively poisoning the pool of future jurors and stirring up hostility towards public employees, which of course we know he has never advocated for that. They also point out that he's naming specific investigators and officials in his videos, and the DA's office is trying to convince the judge, look, he shouldn't be allowed to talk about this. Now here's the important update. What actually happened in court on the gag order. That original blanket gag the state asked for, no comments on the case, no videos, no monetization, did not survive as is. In a hearing on December 8th, the DA's office backed off that first version, acknowledging it was too broad. Of course it was. The judge ended up putting a limited gag order in place instead. Under that order, Cody is still allowed to talk about his case on social media. He can discuss the charges, what's the public record, his opinion of the law and how it affects him. What he can't do is post or quote non-public material from discovery, which I don't think he had done. So he can't read that investigative report that hasn't really been filed in open court as of yet. The judge even ordered him to take down or edit his "they're trying to silence me" video to strip out the parts where he's showing and reading from that non-public report. Cody came out of that hearing calling the ruling reasonable because he seems like a reasonable guy, saying it protects the process without completely nuking his ability to speak. So I think the court got it right. But he also made it clear he still thinks thinks trying to block the discussion of public information would indeed cross a constitutional line. And I do think when you look at the fact that they even submitted a request to completely silence him over these charges, it doesn't appear to be coming from a place of confidence in their case, particularly because the way he talked about his case in these previous videos were just revealing public information tied to the case in a pretty matter-of-fact way. Obviously, he's a little frustrated with the situation, as you can imagine, but it wasn't as if he was up there saying anything egregious. I mean, I think it's fair to say this is a controversial case, to say the least. And it's a case that I think the state has a lot riding on, because if they lose this case in court, the whole Montana loophole issue is going to be hard to deal with in the future for them. So on one side, you've got a state government that seems a lot more worried about optics and control than just getting their tax bill paid. They allegedly sat on information, moved in with an arrest instead of a bill or an audit, and then tried to slam a near total gag on the one guy central to the case trying to speak about a situation. You've got a creator whose whole brand is "I'll show you everything," suddenly running headfirst into the reality that the more massive your audience is, apparently the more the justice system is going to freak out about your speech. His message to the Department of Revenue is basically, look, if you want to collect tax, cool, educate people. Don't ambush them and try to tape their mouth shut when they complain about the way the situation was handled. The bigger picture here is the clash between free speech and a fair trial in the age of influencers.
America is for the people, and the people are the ones in charge. I don't have anything against you guys personally. I haven't seen your faces. I'm sure you're great people, and I know your job is to collect tax, but what better way to collect tax than to educate people on how to be in compliance? The pissing match does not work. America was founded by real people that value and protect freedoms, and I'm one of those people. If we want to keep playing this game, game on. If we can have a meeting and talk about this and figure out a way to educate people on what your guys' goal is, game on as well. I would love to work together, but just as the same reason my mugshot was public when I was arrested with 5 cops at my door, the public deserves to know why, and that's why I've made this video.
Courts do have the power to limit certain speech to protect a jury from being tainted, especially when someone is facing criminal charges. But at the same time, talking about your own case, criticizing the government, calling out what you think is overreach is literally classic First Amendment territory. Cody's hearing effectively drew a line. You can talk, but you can't leak the state's internal paperwork before it hits the public record, which I think that part is fair. With a felony is still on the table and a process that could drag well into 2026. He says he wants to be fully compliant and would have paid if anyone had told him what he owed. The state says they've got enough evidence to prove he intentionally dodged the tax. So what could happen next? Watch whether more details from the investigation become public through official filings. Watch how he reacts, because if Tennessee wins here, it will send a message to everyone else in Tennessee. So let me know what you all think down in the comments. Is this about a Ferrari tax bill or about making an example out of someone who's too loud to ignore? As always, we'll keep tracking this situation, so be sure to subscribe with notifications on for the latest news and updates.